Barbara Courtney with Children of Incarcerated Parents. I host Shining the Light and co-partner with What's Up Kansas City Cascade Media. Today we have a guest, Miss Ann McKelvy-Ewing, and before we begin, I would like, my quote is always, where there's no vision, there's no hope. And shining the light is, we shine a light on mass incarceration, children who are impacted by incarceration, as well as other resources that happen in our community and really all over the world. And Miss Ann today going to share with us about her organization as well. And as I introduce you to the audience, can you share with our audience where you was raised, where you was born, what school? Mary said, just tell us something about you. And I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Barbara, for having me. To me, it's always an honor, as well as a privilege, to be able to share with the community, or those that are listening, what's going on this end. It's all about us working together as a community, working from within our community so that we can heal ourselves. And so I appreciate any opportunity that I can share that. So as Barbara said, hello, I am Ann McKelvy-Ewing. I've recently, I had that hyphenated name, Ewing. And I am, let's see, I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. I have never left Kansas City, Missouri. I once had a desire to leave years ago, but my family's here, my roots is here, everything that I do is here. So this is where I am, and the harvest is plenty right here in Kansas City. So I was born and raised in Kansas City. I went to Central High School, the Mighty Blue Eagles. What other school is there to go to? Central High School, the Mighty Blue Eagles. I came out in 1975, and back then there was a lot of school pride. Don't have much of that now. I have at this time, well, I've got 2 sons. I've got 4 grandsons, 1 great grandson, and most of all, my granddaughter.
All right.
I've got all these boys, and God finally did grant me a little girl. And so that's all of them are my pride and joy. But that little girl kind of gets a little extra attention, because she is a girl. And so that pretty much wraps it up. I work for the city of Kansas City. If you want to give a little background on my professional, I worked for the city of Kansas City for 30 years. And I retired after 30 years. I retired in 2007. And I tell you, I haven't looked back. I appreciate the experience of working with the city. I really do, because that's basically where I grew up, because I started when I was 20 years old, I believe. Yeah, I was 20 when I started. And then I retired in 30 years, but I didn't retire from working. I just retired from that, from the city. And that laid the foundation for me to go on and move in really what I believe what I was born to do. I was a late bloomer. I went back to school to get my bachelor's in social work degree when I was 40 years old. So that lets you know that, listen, there is no age that's too old to do what you need to do to advance yourself. So I was 40 years old when I went back to school. And, actually, Barbara, I don't really think that I would have been able to do it before then, because I wasn't focused. I had a child when I was 18. I wasn't focused. I was focused on being a mother and providing and working and all of that. And so at 40, that was just the right time. And I got my degree in a bachelor's degree in social work. And when I retired in 2007, I've been doing social work. I haven't stopped working. I just retired from the city, but yeah, never. And you know what? I'm going to work until I lay down and don't get up. I'm going to work it. Yeah, I'm going to work in this field in some shape, form, or fashion till I can't anymore. There's no retiring from this. And so then I went and worked for several agencies after that. But I'll stop there. Then we'll talk about that. But that's basically pretty simple background.
Okay. Well, what was your reason for finding your organization? Can you tell us the name of your organization? What was your reason for creating this organization?
Okay. So then I'm going to go on then after the retirement. I didn't want to get ahead of myself or ahead of you. So then after I retired from the city of 30 years, I was, I'm thankful I was 50. So I was too young, I was too young. I was just getting started. So then, like I said, I went into working for different nonprofit organizations to do what I actually, had my degree in, and that is social work. So I went and I worked for this battered women's shelter, one of the largest in Kansas City. I went and worked in this battered women's shelter. And I loved it. And I was an advocate with the women. And I had a rapport with the women, and so I knew who was coming and who was going, who was coming and who was going. So what I noticed though, Barbara, when I was doing my advocacy, I noticed that it was the same women over and over and over again. The recidivism rate was so high. They would come broken with nothing. It's just the way that, I mean, it's really sad. They come with their children and they would have nothing but this, but with this battered women's shelter, they would get them back up on their feet in terms of removing all the barriers, because they would come there with nothing. So the shelter would provide them with everything. They would remove the barriers that would keep them from being able to move out again and start all over again. They will remove those barriers, whether it was paying off, delinquent bills, paying deposits on apartments, just everything that was necessary to get that woman back up on her feet so that she can become independent again. But in 6 to 8 months, after all that was put in them, the case management, the therapy, that woman, and because I had such a rapport with the women, I knew, like I said, I knew it was coming and going. That woman and her family would be right back at the shelter at zero, with nothing, with absolutely nothing. And I didn't understand that. So as a result, the shelter stayed full of the same women. And it just wasn't our shelter where I was at. It was all the shelters in the 4-state area. That's what blew my mind, because we had contact with each other and they would stay full, but it would be the same women. And I was wondering, what is going on here? I mean, everything was done, I thought, to get them up on their feet. So I began to talk to the women, and just ask them what's going on. And as I began to question them to see what was going on, I found out something that was very, very profound. I found out that even though the shelter, they would deal with their tangible needs, like I said, paying their bills and all those barriers, those tangible barriers, that they could get back up on their feet and move out. But what wasn't happening is that the foundational skills is what was lacking, because it's a temporary shelter, and the temporary shelter is just that. It's temporary. We're there to get, you're here temporarily. Back when I was working there, I think 90 days was the most. If you got a chance to stay 120 days, you were doing well. But now they've lengthened the stay. But even I think 6 months is the length of the stay. That is not enough time to prepare the woman and her family to stay to move out and to stay independent. And so so that's what was lacking. And I'm talking about simple foundational skills, life skills, such as budgeting, knowing how to budget your money, healthy relationships, knowing how to choose healthy relationships, critical thinking, parenting skills, a conflict resolution. They would get jobs, but they would get on them jobs and fall out and get to fight and everything, and they couldn't keep the jobs because those skills, those foundational skills that you and I take for granted, they were lacking. So as a result, what God gave me is called TLIA was birthed. TLIA was already in my heart years before I started with the shelter, but it was just a vision. I didn't really have much to it. I knew what I needed to do or wanted to do because of my life, but I didn't really have the full, the whole, all the parts to put it together to make it come together. But when I went to that shelter, it all came together, and that's how TLIA. And TLIA is an acronym for turning liabilities into assets. Turning liabilities into assets, and that's the acronym of TLIA. Now, the reason why it's called turning liabilities is because, let's just keep it real, Barbara. When we have people that are broken or dependent on the system or whatever, society deems these individuals, because I was one of them, as liabilities. You're taking from, even though we know the truth about that, because a whole bunch of folks that are rich up and in is taken from the system too. Social Security, for example, is a senior welfare. Because you're not working no more. You've been, even though they take it out your checks or whatever, but you're being given a stipend. But we don't look at it as that because other people receive it. You know what I'm saying? So the people that are on food assistance or getting a check or whatever they're getting from the government, they are deemed by societies as liabilities. And so what my organization is addressing, so we're going to take these liabilities and we're going to take them and we're going to turn these liabilities into assets to themselves first, assets to their children, and assets to the community. Turning that liability into assets to themselves, assets to their children, and assets to the community. And the way well, I'll stop right there.
Well, you can go on, because one of the things I was gonna ask you as well while you're talking were the challenges that some of your family faces, and you can give us an example. Some of the crisis or the challenge.
Some of the crisis, the challenges. So before I do that, can I lay out how we plan on doing it?
Yes.
And then, okay, right, okay. So, as I said, taking the who's deemed as a liability determined into assets, and so the plan is to when they're at the shelter, we will collaborate with the homeless shelter, with the battered women's shelter. We will collaborate with them, and we will let the case managers know what the criteria is to get in our program. And so they will be referred to our program. And the way the vision is, we will take them out of that community setting, Barbara, take them out of that community setting where they all are together. Because, in a shelter, everybody's sharing everything.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we're taking them out of that community shelter and we are placing them in, the goal is to purchase a 4 to 6 plex apartment. And each family will be placed in their own living space. That's the only way you can learn your foundational skills. They will be placed in their own living space in their apartments. The apartments will be furnished for them. They do have to work. because that's one of the criteria. We don't care how much you make, but something, because that's in building. You will be with a case manager. You will learn how to budget your money. You will pay a small percentage of your money, just like you do in real life, to your rent. You know what I'm saying? To your utilities. You'll have a case manager that will teach you, because there will be an assessment that will happen at the beginning. Right. And we will identify what barriers are there. What do we need to work on? What do we need to do? Because the bottom line is, Barbara, we want you to become independent, but not just become independent, but stay independent. So TLIA will be that bridge between that shelter or that temporary living to full dependency. We will be the net that will catch them to teach them those foundational skills, whatever is needed, link them to community partners, organizations, because we're not alone in this. We link them up with whoever is there, whoever they need, so that when they leave the place, which we did a research, is between 18 and 24 months that we can basically work some of these things in them. All we're dealing with for foundation. Then when they leave, then they will hopefully cut down that recidivism rate, and the doors will be open for more people that unfortunately will need those places. So you were asking about what you was asking about,
for example, because I know you made a referral to our organization because the mother children was being tardy or missing school, and so that was a crisis, and they had to go to court. Can you expound on that, or what that crisis, that challenging? That's what I'm saying.
I got you. You know what I'm finding out, Barbara, more and more, the biggest challenge, I'm just going to be real with you. The biggest challenge, even though the resources are there for them, for the women, and I'm saying women because that's who, that's our demographic. But the biggest challenge that we run into is them being open to change, being open, being willing to say, to admit, I don't know. Now they'll say, I need help, but it'll be on my, it's my conditions, under my conditions. The biggest challenge is having the woman open up her eyes to really see where she really is. Unless you admit where you are, you can't move any further. And that's the biggest challenge, because somehow when we do the assessment and let them see what's lacking or what barriers are there, somehow the woman takes that as we're calling them a bad parent or a bad person. And so as a result, they become resistance to change. That's what I want to say. The resistance to change. But that's a human thing, because anytime change is introduced to us, we resist it. Anytime change is reduced, we are creatures of habit. Let's just face it. Not just people who are homeless or considered liability. Well, that's human nature to be resistant to change. And so that's one of the biggest things that we run across first, and that takes months for the person to at least see, okay, I don't know, I do need help. It is outside of what I thought it was going to be. Changing the way you think, changing the way you perceive, changing the way you process things. That's the biggest thing. Changing the mentality that's so embedded in us as humans. That's where you can look at society right now and see, let's just call something out that's real. Racism.
Right.
Something that's so ingrained in us, generation after generation after generation. That's that. Then when you have a family, then we're going to take the other end of the spectrum, Barbara. When you have a family that grandma A great grandma was on assistance, grandma on assistance, mama's on assistance, then it's me. Instead of taking that and saying, hey, we can break that. That just because that's all you have known, don't mean that that's the way it has to be. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yes.
And we have children under us. Their children is looking at them and seeing how it's done, and it's repeated. That's the biggest barrier, sister.
Okay.
The biggest barrier. I hope I made sense.
Yeah, you made a lot of sense. But also, can you share your thoughts and your concern regarding this violence? Because some of your women has been in the shelter for violence and fled abuse and everything else. And today, a lot of families facing so many issues, especially we have so many homicides in this community. So, what is your thought on it? And how would you give us, what's your thought and concern? How would you address the violence we're all facing in this community?
When you sent me that question, I had to actually sit down and think about that. I had to just process it instead of just spouting out something that I had to think about that and process that. And I'm going to tell you, and it's nothing profound, but I'm going to tell you what I came up with, sister. What I came up with is that first addressing what's going on. Now, of course, there is not one answer. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of things that is broken in our society. But since I deal with since my emphasis is on parenting and laying foundations and all of that, I believe one of the biggest barrier is that we have left, I believe, and I'm not putting all the blame on parents, but I believe that if and when the parent comes to the realization that we have to turn our emphasis back on the family, turn our emphasis back on the family and parent our children. Now that's something big. That's saying a lot. But what has happened, sister, is that of course we got to work. Parents has got to work. I was a single parent working, we have got to work. So we are outside the home. It's not like when I was growing up and my mother didn't work, my dad. Well, that's out. Right. But nevertheless, we still have to put a priority on raising our children at the very top. That's a priority that is unfortunately pretty close to the bottom. We know how to provide and buy the latest and the greatest. We know how to do that, but that ain't parenting. We know how to buy gadgets and all those things and social media and put them in. We know how to do all those external things, but what's not happening is that that has been the parent, that has been the substitute to parenting. So what has happened is that society has allowed all those external things to parent, and that nurturing, that for real nurturing, none of those things can nurture our children. None of those things can build up our children. We have a daughter that feels unloved for whatever reason. Maybe the father's not in the home. Who knows? The mother may not be in the home, but that daughter's not feeling loved. And all social media does, it just makes her feel worse, because all you see on there is the makeup and everything that everybody's putting on their best face. And all I know is, as a teenager, I'm using this for an example, I don't look like none of them people. And I'm not going to look like. So as a result, my esteem is not built up. My self-esteem is so low because I'm not getting that from home telling me you're beautiful, you're enough. That's what I'm talking about, the nurturing. You're beautiful, you're enough, you can, you are. instead of you're not. You are this. You can accomplish things. You're the head. You're not the tail. You're a queen. You're not, you know what I'm saying? You're not a thought. You're a queen. You know, your body is sacred. That's what's missing. So as a result, the first person that tells her or him, "You so cute," fall for it. And that person has no good intentions in mind, but to use her or him. I teach my son with his daughter. This is the problem. I teach my son with his daughter. You tell her that she's beautiful. You tell her that she's enough. You, daddy, tell her that. So when somebody, this boy out here, because she's a beautiful girl, this boy out here tell her that, "You so cute," I know. My daddy told me I'm not. Or somebody, "You so ugly, you so black," but my daddy says I'm beautiful. You feel that? My daddy said. That's what's lacking. The parent turning inward, putting their eyes back on making the main thing the main thing. That's one of the issues that is missing. Being concerned, being in that child's business. There's no reason why, sister, a child should be out on these streets and I don't know where my child is. Unless they're just rebellious and running away, because we do have that. But there's no way I don't know where you at. There's no way that you're staying out. I'm just talking about the old-fashioned stuff. There's no way that you're staying all night at somebody's house and I haven't talked to that parent. See, you know what I'm saying? That's stuff that's just not heard of anymore. But we're losing. We're losing our children to the violence. There's nowhere in the world that your door is closed and you're locked up in that bedroom on that phone or doing whatever, and I don't know what's going on. There's no way that you're walking around. See, this is the stuff that don't happen. You're walking around with your earphones in, listening to this music, and I'm not saying, what you listen to? Come here. And you can make it to whereas you don't seem like the Gestapo.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it like that. But sometimes we've got to let go of wanting to be friends with our children and be the authority and being the example of what they want. That's part of the problem. That's why the violence is, because there's nothing that nurturing, that parenting at home is what's lacking. Mm-hmm. I don't care what nobody say. If I teach you that you're valuable, if I teach you you're valuable, I teach you that and I put that in you, that will allow you not to only see that I'm valuable, but you're valuable too, sister. You're valuable too, brother. And I ain't gonna want to take your life, not just like that. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much for telling us about TLIA and what you're doing in the community. I love what you're doing. And I love that you're a good resource. And I look forward to us collaborating or networking because each one has to teach one. It's important that we have these communities. So I always want to sign out with a good quote or a thought. Do you have a good quote you go by, or a thought that you go by, a phrase that you go by? Can you leave us with that phrase?
I'm going to take your phrase, sister. Each one, teach one. And that's my phrase as well. Each one, teach one. I am my brother's keeper. All right. I am my sister's keeper. I am. Yeah, I am my sister's keeper. Mm-hmm.
That's powerful. We are. We can't do it without each other.
And I value you as a person. Yeah.
Yes. So with that, I thank you so much and have a great day. And to the
Thank you for having me, sister.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.